Today.
So sorry about, I thought
That's
the
all right.
recording was going, but let's just keep rolling.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and so that part you won't get to hear on the recording, but the rest of this you will get to hear on the recording. We're going to start off with our speaker introductions. We have four great speakers today. We're going to start off with Ty Holgum. Ty is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer at East Central Energy. Ty's going to talk to us today about ECE Fiber, which is their locally owned 100% fiber optic internet service. Next, we'll hear from Nate Betcher. Nate is the president and CEO of Pierce Pepin Cooperative Services, and he's going to talk to us about their broadband subsidiary, Swift Current Connect. Swift Current Connect. Then next up, we'll have Tim Wheeler from La Plata Electric Association. Tim is a board member at LPEA, and he is going to talk to us about the LPEA interaction and then transition with their subsidiary Fast Track Internet. And finally, we'll have Mark Kurtz. Mark is the director of broadband operations for Elevate Internet, which is a subsidiary of DMEA, or Delta Montrose Electric Association. So with that, let's just jump into it. We have a full lineup today, and I will pass the mic over to Ty.
Yeah, thanks, Ted, for the intro. As Ted said, Vice President CIO, I've been at East Central Energy for nearly 22 years, and I've been a big active part of our EC fiber build out for since 2022. I'll get into some timelines here. I thought this first slide, I maybe should have put this last, but it's kind of an interesting comparison of pictures of one of the original poles being set back in the 30s, and then our first fiber being hung in 2023. So kind of show some perspective of where we have come from as an electric cooperative to now providing fiber broadband. So next slide, Kensley. So the CAN stats here that most co-ops show, we're fairly large co-op and serve portions of east central Minnesota and then northwest Wisconsin. We're the third largest member-owned co-op. We've got roughly 70,000 electric members. You can kind of see poles per mile. 212 employees. When we started out in this venture, we were around 160 employees. So we've added pretty significant number of employees since then. We're just at pulling up on the fiber members are actually around 7,500. We have signed up as that number, 8,250. We've constructed about 2,700 miles, and now it's probably actually closer to 28 or 2,900 miles since sending this presentation in. We've had a significant number of grant awards, and it's roughly a $250 to $300 million project that we've started out on. So next slide, please. So the why, and so that's kind of about who we were. This is a little bit more why. We had been looking at serving fiber internet for a number of years through feasibility studies and other things. And what really got us to look at it a little bit deeper was the federal funding announcement that happened back in 2021. The $42 billion that's now finally coming to fruition with the BEAD funding. I'm not going to go into details on that, but ultimately the why was strengthening our co-op's electric system was something that we saw as major added value. Not only could we serve fiber internet to our members or provide in the competitive environment, but also strengthening our electric system. Delivering on member value, stronger communities. This is a full fiber to the premise network. There is no fixed wireless. It's top of the line technology. And we do serve, going into this, we serve about four portions of 14 counties. And there are 79 counties in Minnesota. We had number one, two, I think four, and six in terms of unserved or underserved members in the state. So we had some areas that folks just didn't have good access to, whether it's old copper DSL or wireless technologies. Kind of future readying our infrastructure for on the electric and fiber side. So this is a network we're building for the future. And again, we talk about economic development in and around our territory now, and it's been pretty substantial with this build out. And we see a lot of things coming our way that we maybe wouldn't have from an electric utility standpoint. So it's interesting to see the progress. Some of the advantages are we are about 60% aerial on our electric side, so we follow the power. If it's overhead, we go overhead. Underground, we go underground. We originally had a 5-year construction timeline, but with some of the BEAD funding, and we've won some areas outside of our service territory that we'll be expanding into. So that might be pushing more like 6 or 7. And I'll talk a little bit about grant funding, but we should be positive cash flow by 28, which if you hit the next slide, Kensley, kind of talk through the timeline. So the board did approve in November of 2022. We hired our first employee in the December, so about a month later. And then in 2023, constructed our first 900 miles. And you might be looking at that saying, well, you only had 12 people online after 900 miles. That seems a little bit low. With weather and some other challenges we have, we were able to get a bunch of construction and done, but we had some supply chain issues and eventually got some folks connected in December of that year. And then 2024 added another 850, turned up about 3,800. We're at the end of the year, we're at 3,800 members online, added another 15 employees. And it always kind of crazy to think about the number of crews that we have out there, but we've got 210-ish employees. But you take the number of crews at 70 times that by about 3, roughly about double that in contractor crew personnel out in the field. Then in 2025, we another 850. That's kind of our sweet spot. Our goal was about 1,000, but with all the issues we've been having, it's really issues in terms of permitting, locates, some other challenges, weather. We're in Minnesota, Wisconsin. We can only construct for about 9 months out of the year, tops. So that becomes a problem. We added 60 employees, another additional, 20 employees. And in 2025, we kind of hit a peak point of connecting about 60 members per week and did that throughout the entire construction season. And now this year, we've got, again, our goal is 1,200 with some permitting challenges. That's probably not going to happen, but hopefully around 10,000 online by the end of the year. And then the whole lather, rinse, repeat would be, our goal would be to have 25 to 30,000 of our 70,000 online. So roughly about a 44% take rate. Next slide. I mentioned grants. We've been very successful. It's a pretty colorful map, but all of the gray, orange, blue, and the dots in Wisconsin are all grant winnings, about $86 million total. And that is quite the endeavor for sure to grant tracking, application process, and all that. Part of the employees that we've brought in have been focused on grant compliance and grant applications, and never realized in my career how difficult grant applications can get, and then the compliance piece of it. But we're much of the way through that. All the gray areas are pretty much complete in construction, and we're getting reimbursement on all those currently. So next slide. So some of the challenges we've had is obviously weather. Initial season of building was very wet, was a problem, and we got some low areas. I'm not sure if you all are aware, but Minnesota, Wisconsin, there's a lot of lakes and water around here, so it can be a challenge to when we do have excessive rain. And then, like I mentioned, we really can't start construction until mid-April. It's kind of our time frame where we try to start May 1st by the latest, and then we're wrapping up around Thanksgiving, and the ground is frozen pretty solid by that time. Compliance on permitting, and then just subcontractors. I mentioned the total number of crews. We put out an RP, and it really wasn't something that many in the nation could really bid on in terms of scale. And so it's been a struggle to get the right ones in. Now at year 4 of construction, we've gotten to a point where we're pretty confident, and we have want to keep the crews we have because it's been going well. And then this competitive space, like we're in a new position here. Electric co-ops provide in a defined territory, and obviously on fiber we are not. So bringing in some marketing folks, sales folks, things we didn't do in the past, and that's been an interesting endeavor. And I'm sure the other panelists will talk some about that. But you can go to the next slide. So some of the successes that we've had, talked about economic development, brought on our first small scale data center. This would not consider hyperscale. And so it's interesting to see some of these opportunities coming our way that, again, we wouldn't have had prior to building out this network. So this advanced datum, Rush City, Minnesota, came to us, and we were able to bring something to him that other providers in the area couldn't, which was obviously scalable service at a very competitive price, and he couldn't be happier. We're trying to get that story out there more of, again, we're member driven and not profit focused. So real-time visibility, we've connected cameras, things we've wanted for 90 years. Well, I guess cameras weren't around in 90 years, but the cameras to all of our data or our substations that have connectivity to them, which is about 10. We won a grant actually to complete all of that. And then lastly, this is an interesting one, this DAC. It's really for challenged folks that they serve. They came to us and said, our provider, we just can't afford it anymore. We were able to save them about $700 a month because they were kind of getting taken to the cleaners with their current provider. And that goes a long ways in showing that we're helping support some of these entities that have a limited budget and work through pricing with them. My last slide, I believe, you can go to Kinsley. This just shows some of the growth, roughly 60 employees, added a broadband department, obviously with 15 employees there. You can see all those positions. Marketing department. We didn't have a marketing department. We had a communications team, which is what most co-ops have. And then our first sales employee just in the last month. There's some other support roles there that are mentioned. And then just so many changes happening. We've added a 25,000 square foot warehouse in late 23 to add to house all these employees, all the fiber huts, cabinets. When you're talking 6,000 miles of fiber in a 5 to 6 year build out, it's a lot. And but it's been exciting, been challenging, and if there's anyone out there that's kind of looking to get into it, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I know my last slide is questions, but I'm going to hand it back to Ted to pass along to our next speaker.
Yeah. Thanks a whole bunch, Ty. And especially thanks for that offer to help everybody else out. It's
Yeah.
truly my hope that you will get, that we can facilitate and that you will get phone calls about that, and that's part of what we really try and accomplish with CIN is to be able to create that network that helps everybody do some of the great things that some of us are already doing. So thanks a lot. We're going to move over to Nate Betcher. Go ahead and give us a little bit of intro on yourself and on Pierce Pepin, and tell us about Swift Current Connect.
Yeah, thanks, Ted and Ty. And I can echo Ty's comments. Because of our proximity, we've had the opportunity to go visit with them and just sit down. And I think we maybe coming into a meeting like that thought, how are we going to fill up a couple hours? And I think when we got done, we're like, man, we could have probably met for a couple of days and just kept kicking the tires on different topics, and they just kind of all came up organically. And so, that's really the value of being cooperatives and working together. And so really appreciate that and appreciate what your organization's doing here and bringing folks together. If we could just go to the next slide. For us, it's been sort of interesting. When I came to Pierce Pepin in 2019, we had really consolidated a lot of our outbound type activities. The organization was, very slim. We had cut back on a number of things that we did within the community. And so, as we think about what Broadband has done for us, I would kind of categorize it into really, these three kind of broad areas, which has really changed our service and creating a culture of service, more focused on how we can be member and customer friendly, how we can do things to keep members, happy and satisfied. I would also say similar with the community. We obviously see our broadband as a critical service, and so as we've been able to reach out into our communities and explore other ways to utilize that fiber network, it's really kind of transitioned us into being a more of a how do we help serve our community, and then lastly just preparing for our future. Go to the next slide. I like Ty's slide. I think this is kind of my equivalent to that. This is something, so original board of directors of Pierce Pepin, and I think, the comment, this came out of a yearbook, but it was, months of discouragement, heartbreaking opposition to this cooperative effort followed. Men of less dedication and determination would have soon despaired and resigned themselves to continue a life of darkness and drudgery on their farms. And I think if you could, just pivot that a little bit, what I would probably suggest to you is that if we hadn't gotten into the broadband business, it would have been a lack of connectivity and connections, from a data standpoint. And so, the board that made that decision today to go forward, I think, also were in their own right pioneers in thinking, ahead about how a fiber network was going to be beneficial. Next slide. So, Ty mentioned lakes. I promise you, we didn't do this on purpose. There's one of those beautiful lakes that we have in Minnesota and Wisconsin. We also have some beautiful rivers that kind of border our service area, and Ty does as well. But we have this saying. It's actually something that we've trademarked, which is, how do we help our members live better? And that's kind of essentially the core of everything we do is are the decisions we're making, are the services we're providing, helping our members live better? Next slide. We also really believe that getting into the fiber network has helped us build better member relationships. I think you can see that in our ACSI score. We've been improving that, year over year. Our Net Promoter Score continues to improve year over year. And so for us, this really helped us sort of redefine who we were as a cooperative and helped us, I think changed our mentality and how we treated our members and really helped us to build better member relations. Next slide, please. Similar, when we got into these were kind of some things that were really important to us. I won't go through each of them. I'm gonna kind of tackle them here in just a minute. But again, I would say, you'll hear this time and time again with us, serving our community, helping our community. It's what it's really all about to us, is being community focused. Next slide, please. So, for us, we saw, kind of three really big pillars: economic development, enabling, 10 gigabit industrial parks. It's funny when I first built this slide years ago, it was, just gigabit, and now we're saying 10 gigabit, and it won't be long before we're saying 50 gigabit or 100 gigabit. So, it's funny how you kind of evolve as we go forward. One thing that, and you'll see a map here, but, we're very close to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So we have a lot of opportunity for both people that commute to work, but also work from home. And so, having a great connection has allowed people to have world-class jobs and never have to leave our service area. And we think that's a really, huge benefit for us. And now today, because of the fiber network we've built, we believe that we can be just as competitive as some of our neighbors in those metro areas, because we can deliver really, really reliable power, and also we can deliver world-class high-speed internet. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, so we don't have a lot of healthcare options within our service area today. our members and community members typically have to go somewhere else. And so, just that opportunity to be able to, interact with physicians, be able to go and look up records or, change orders to medications and things like that, has been a huge deal, for our members. It's also opened the door for educational opportunities. When you have a great high-speed connection, no longer are you constrained to just having to go to your local community college or university. It really opens up the door for a lot of other places so that people can get their educational needs fulfilled. We also see this as a way to stay connected with friends and family. Everyone can make a phone call to mom or dad or to their grandkids, but a FaceTime call or a Zoom call is so much more powerful, and there's a lot to be said about that. And when you have a reliable connection, it makes it a lot easier. And then something that's really become kind of important to a lot of our members is that ability to just sort of be able to retire and age in place, right? So, and that makes it a lot easier when kids can check in on mom and dad, when they can get the services that they need right there at home. It's actually extended, some of the ability for our members to stay in their homes much longer than maybe before. Next slide, please. And then, we've always really been challenged was trying to figure out how to quantify the utility benefits of what we do. We know that getting grid assets connected and building the grid of the future is really, really important, especially as reliability becomes a bigger imperative. And so, for us, we're starting to leverage our fiber network to help us build out that next generation grid. And again, when we've done our return on investment, and you do all the analysis like that for us was one of the hardest things to quantify, and we still have not really ever been able to get our arms around that. But it's something that from our perspective is really important. And then we also see this really as a gateway to building a more transactional grid. And so when I talk about a transactional grid, that's our members who are participating with us in load control programs, potentially have solar and batteries. And so with connectivity now allows us to have better insight into those devices, to be able to leverage those as part of our fleet, if you will, and to help us reduce demand and lower our capacity. And so, for us, connectivity was just one first element of building that future grid and again, a more transactional grid. Next slide, please. And then fundamentally, a big thing for us was just, how do we be transformational? How do we help our communities rise to the occasion of what's coming next and where the world is going? Next slide. So, Swift Current Connect is our brand, powered by Pierce Pepin Cooperative Services. That name is actually really near and dear because of, as I mentioned before, the rivers and the tie-in to the electrical grid. And we think that we provide really a swift internet connection. So, next slide, please. So we're a little bit smaller of a cooperative than East Central. So just to kind of give you some perspective, we have about 8,000 accounts, about 10,000 meters. We've built about 1,300 miles of fiber. We passed by about 8,300 homes and have connected nearly 5,000. So our take rates are about, in that 60% range. We go by more homes than we serve on the electric side today. So we've actually reached out and gone beyond our traditional electric system. And with the BEAD award that we have, we'll actually pass by about another 6,500 homes, all of which are not part of our electric co-op service territory. So it's really, for us, that's really important. I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute of why that's important. And then again, we're, reliable, fast, and then the big thing for us is local. Next slide, please. So this is a map of our current service area. One thing that I'll note here is we actually do reach into Minnesota. We serve some accounts in Minnesota, but what we actually did is we have a direct connection into the 511 building, which is a regional IXP. So that gives us some additional leverage to be able to tap into those bigger, broader networks and really scale our services, not just in our local area, but across the country. Next slide, please. And so, as I kind of wrap up here, I mentioned this, we're really working on that transition from a retail service provider to a technology solutions provider. And so, very similar to our energy services provider, kind of focus, we're also looking at, what other solutions can we provide with technology. So, we're doing a lot with building access and security, Wi-Fi to buildings, campus Wi-Fi, getting other utility services like sewer and water systems connected with TLS services and other dark fiber needs. And we're just now serving or getting ready to serve our first actual DIA circuit off of our fiber network as well. So we're growing this beyond just providing that retail service to providers. Next slide, please. And again, I want to just kind of, again, our goal would be the number one provider of broadband solutions. And then if you just go to the next slide, our goal is really, again, back to where we started, which is continuing our commitment to the community. And then next slide, please. For us, I kind of go back and I think about this. Really what we've done and what our people are focused on is really trying to build a legacy that lasts all of us. We want to be those, what seemingly were old guys in that picture we showed you before. We hope 50, 60, 70 years from now, someone has a picture of us and says, man, what they did was really, really amazing and really was transformational to our communities. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ted.
Awesome, Nate. Super great story, inspirational. Like job well done to you all. It really is cool to see what you're accomplishing for your communities. We're going to jump over to Tim Wheeler. Little bit different perspective on this speaker. Tim is all the rest of our speakers are leadership and staff at the co-ops, and Tim is actually a board director at the co-op at La Plata Electric Association. Full disclosure, I serve with Tim at La Plata Electric Association. So turn it over to you, Tim. Be great if you could give us a little bit of like your background and why you're passionate about this, and then jump into LPEA and LPEA's involvement in broadband. Over to you.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Yeah, I'm Tim Wheeler. I currently am on the board of La Plata Electric as a director. I'm also the treasurer of the board. And I was elected to the board in 2018 and served as the representative assigned by the board, appointed by the board to a 75% owned broadband subsidiary called Fast Track Communications. And in that role, I was trying to represent LPA at the Fast Track board and represent Fast Track at the LPA board. So there was a lot of communications and translation that had to go on there. My background, I've lived in this community. I live in the Durango area of Southwest Colorado. And I've lived here about 32 years, and I came out of a high-tech computer background just prior to when I moved here. I've always had kind of a real penchant for trying to figure out how to do economic development in a sensible way and marry that with my aging tech background at this point. So maybe the next slide, please. I don't have all the pretty pictures anymore. I'll explain a little bit about that later. But the LPA broadband history is lengthy. It started in 1998 when two adjacent electric co-ops, Empire Electric Association and La Plata Electric Association, made some investment in an effort to bring broadband into our region. The LPA region includes several counties in Southwest Colorado. It covers, at the moment, about 4,000 miles of energized electrical grid. It has about 50,000 members or meters. And Empire is a bit smaller than that, but also covers a large area like we do. This is, Maybe you've heard of the Rocky Mountains. That's kind of where we're at, right? And often referred to as the west slope of Colorado, with the Rocky Mountains in between us, and the east slope, which is where most of the population lives. So it's been an area that doesn't get the investment that you would get in a much more high density area like the Denver and Fort Collins and that area. And so back then, these co-ops said, we don't have we were like the logging road rather than the last mile road. Uh, and we needed to connect this sort of logging road of, if you will, of connectivity for just even for our basic institutions to the big highway, down in Albuquerque or Denver that had access to large, high capacity fiber networks. And so that was the attempt. It was a modest attempt. And it survived a couple of years before that went bankrupt. From the ashes of that bankruptcy, if you will, Fast Track Communications was formed in 2002 with this ownership share of 75%. And over the next 21 years, Fast Track essentially built a robust regional fiber optic network connecting Southwest Colorado to those long haul fiber networks. And it became a profitable subsidiary for both the co-ops. And it was understood that Fast Track could take all of those profits and plow them back into their business. There was not expected to be a cash dividend to either of them. Their output was to build a network and keep us competitive, mostly on the institutional and the business level. I jumped to the chase here, or jumped to the end here, which is Fast Track was acquired by Clear Networks, another West Slope, relatively local ISP, as part of an ongoing sort of strategic partnership for future broadband deployment in LPA service area. And if we go to the next slide, I can give a little bit of background on that. Fast Track's success was, as I said, through this sort of regional broadband provider, but it was a service provider's service provider. It was that middle mile that brought the ability for numerous institutions and customers like cell phone providers, call centers, hospitals, county governments, and city and municipal governments, as well as key businesses, access to high-speed broadband. And over the years, several feasibility studies were undertaken to understand what would be needed to make a fiber to the home investment, to go beyond this sort of regional service provider and into, as some of the other earlier presenters have put forward, the idea of a retail internet service provider with high-speed connections. The connections here for most of us who are outside of the sparse, dense regions like Durango or Pagosa Springs, these are small communities, dense. Those have had investment for better, higher speed retail investment that often piggybacked on the middle mile network that Fast Track had built. When we looked at trying to build our own fiber to the home investment, it was considered very costly, and also the ROI was not as good as what we had been experiencing with business. And we had an opportunity that rests there, but that was not capitalized to take advantage of. So let's see. It would need significantly more investment. And at the time, up until about 2020, maybe go to the next slide. This is my graphic here. Um, this was the network that Fast Track built in that period of time. And I don't have a pointer here, but you can see it's a large loop that goes from Durango, which is kind of in the left middle there, down to Albuquerque, up to Denver, around to Grand Junction, and back to Durango. And that red line is mostly West Slope, Colorado, and sort of the western edge of the Rockies through New Mexico. And that was the business territory that primarily we concentrated on, or Fast Track concentrated on. Maybe the next slide, please. So how does this all fit in with LPA, right? And as Ted mentioned at the beginning, my role has been one of governance. It's a director. I'm not on the ground, staff out there making this happen. So in that role, I've tried to concentrate and focus LPA on, what opportunities do we have? What is it that members want? And what is our strategic goal around broadband? It's historically, and as anyone who's is in broadband business within the context of a cooperative knows there's essentially operational fiber connecting your substations, automating aspects of the control of the electrical grid. And then we, in our case, had a subsidiary, Fast Track Communications. And as I mentioned before, Fast Track was the LPA commercial effort. It fulfilled, I guess, a couple of co-op principles. One was concern for community, which is often referred to as the economic development arm or economic development principle. How do we take what we are doing and reinvest it back into our community? And possibly the other one, clearly the other one is co-op principle 6, which is cooperation with other co-ops, because we had this subsidiary with another co-op as their part of their investment. I think a watershed for LPA and its members in this rural area was during the pandemic in 2020, when there was a huge need for robust broadband capability and infrastructure. That was not really there. We received coming out of that, subsequent to it, a lot of member interest on how are we using this asset that we have, Fast Track? How could we use it? What should be LPA's strategic direction with regards to broadband? As a result, we formed a committee within the, it's a tried and true method in a co-op to form a committee. And we formed a broadband committee to identify what would it take for us to utilize this asset, or should we go in other directions with regards to this, or even perhaps not have a broadband strategic goal. And it was a lively, lengthy discussion. It involved staff, directors, and members in an attempt to define that. The result was in late 2021, we developed a broadband strategic goal, or a strategic broadband goal, which is essentially to pursue a funding and partnership strategy that ideally will enable broadband connections to our memberships by 2030, but without increasing electric rates to do so. So, a way to translate that strategic goal is to essentially say, we will partner as a co-op, but we will not invest, essentially. And that partnership strategy can be with other ISPs, with other cooperatives, and to seek funding that is also through those same kind of partnerships or grant funding. And as one of the previous presenters mentioned, and probably many of you are aware, there was subsequent to 2020's pandemic, there was an incredible amount of federal investment made or promised and hopefully made available for broadband development. So, this idea of partnering, finding those kinds of funding opportunities, but not necessarily, neither of the co-ops wanted to utilize their assets, bind their assets, mortgage their assets, or take electric rate income to invest in broadband. Net result was that we at Fast Track pursued partnership partners, which resulted in Clear Networks and their parent company, who had made significant investment in them as well, for developing a fiber to the home network across the Western Slope. They acquired Fast Track in 2023. And that acquisition occurred around the same time that a couple of other ISPs, one of them being the Southern Indian Tribe, which is a Native American tribe, one of two in Colorado that happens to be primarily in LPA service territory. They also were making a significant investment in broadband for their members across their tribal territory. So we worked with both Clear Networks as the acquirer of Fast Track and with the Southern Ute Tribe in acquiring funding for their broadband connection. And those two strategic, if you will, partnerships have resulted in what is a fair amount of success. Clear Networks, for example, has received millions of dollars in federal investment. And in fact, just this last week in my neighborhood, I live about 12 miles outside of Durango in a small subdivision. I'm not part of the city. And they are this week replacing 5 utility poles that, after their inspection of the LPA infrastructure and meeting LPA requirements for pole attachments that indicate they need to replace those poles. So there's a win-win right there. LPA gets 5 new poles. Fast Track, Clear Networks gets to make an investment into a relatively small but dense neighborhood that is a great ROI. They're using federal broadband dollars and to some degree using some of the operational fiber of LPA and the network that Fast Track had built to achieve that. And they're doing this in multiple communities around here. Similarly, the Southern Ute Tribe is doing the same thing. So,
Hey, Tim, can I push you towards the end quickly?
sure,
Thanks.
that is the end, actually.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that great story and kind of the different perspective from the governance standpoint, and then also from the perspective that is LPA doesn't actually own or operate a subsidiary in the broadband space and made some different decisions about how to best serve the members for broadband. We're going to jump over to our last speaker today, Mark Kurtz. With DMEA, Delta Montrose Electric Association. DMEA happens to be a relatively close neighbor to Tim and myself and LPEA, just a couple hundred miles north. And Mark's going to talk to us about their subsidiary, Elevate. So take it away, Mark.
Great. Again, thanks for allowing the opportunity for us to present. We we always enjoy talking about Elevate when we have the opportunity to. And I guess when I listen to especially Ty and Nate, I can say really, us too. I mean, there's nothing they said that was a whole lot different than probably what we faced when we were getting ready to stand to Elevate up. But next slide, please. So just quick, the origin of our story, the building of our network, Elevate today, and then maybe the future of Elevate. We'll kind of briefly touch on those. So next slide, please. Seem to hang on real quick. I think we may have jumped over a couple of slides. Can we try going back one? Huh. We've missed a little bit, but that's okay. Let me just talk about it based on my deck that I see here. Actually, our network really started not in terms of broadband, but needing to connect 21 substations through our service territory. And I was finishing a project at the time which had to do with smart meters. And we were asked to take a look at potentially building a middle mile network that connect 21 substations. We were using a variety of things to connect to our substations back then, from fixed wireless to cellular to microwave. And we did like a 30-year net present value of the cost of doing that annually, and it came out to around $3 million. And I went and got some bids on building a middle mile network, and it came out to about $3 million. And the board said, we really ought to do that because now we have control over that network, which was not a very reliable network when we were kind of doing what I'll call the dog's breakfast of technologies to connect to our substations. So that led us in 2013 through 2015 to construct a middle mile network to these 21 substations. It was about 120 miles of fiber that connected all substations back to our HQ in Montrose, Colorado. So that is where we were born. But the slide you have in front of you right now, member-driven initiative. When that middle mile was built, some of our more savvy board members who wanted broadband went about talking to people about what this would look like. And we had a board meeting where we had about 80 members of our community show up, and they were your city council members, your mayors, your bank presidents, your school superintendents, your hospital administrators. And, as you know, in the co-op world, you're lucky to get one or two guests at a meeting. We had 80 people show up and say, we want you guys to get into the broadband business. And initially the board was kind of a, hey, we sell electrons, this isn't our space. And the message loud and clear from our membership is it needs to be your space because you now have created this superhighway between both cities and all 6 townships in our region. You can backhaul information to all of these places. Now we want you to go to the next step, and we want you to become an ISP because we need this. So our board looked at that and came up eventually with what they called their 3-legged stool. They would do this as long as it supported economic development, healthcare, and education. It's okay if people want to stream Netflix, but that couldn't be the primary reason that the co-op was going to invest. The co-op was going to invest for the community. So in 2016, we stood Elevate up, and I guess can we go one more slide past that? Okay, so we launched in 2016. And it was kind of interesting in the beginning, right? Because I became Elevate's first employee, and my first job was actually to go find and hire my boss. What we realized early on was that we had a lot of systems in place that could support an ISP, like our billing systems and our customer service systems and all those things, but we really didn't have any of the chops required to be in the internet business. So my first job as the first employee was actually to go hire my boss, which I did in 2016. And then we began to build out Elevate. So if we go to the next slide, please. And maybe the next one. So this is just kind of a neat little video I wanted to show y'all. It only takes a few seconds, but I think it kind of demonstrates where we live in Colorado and what some of the challenges were in building fiber out here. And this is one that kind of shows you what those challenges were. And there's some music that went with that that's probably not going to play. But so what are we doing here? We're pulling fiber on horseback. Why were we pulling fiber on horseback? We have a lot of BLM property out here, and we cross BLM for large stretches. And in that particular winter, there was some endangered species they were concerned about. They were concerned about some of the animals in the area, and they were also concerned about certain plants. It was going to shut us down for about 6 months to have BLM approve everything so that we could get vehicles in there. We got creative and asked them what would it look like if we just pulled all the fiber in on horseback. And essentially within a day, BLM came back and said, yeah, you can do that. And some of the contractor we were using, a lot of his guys on the weekends do rodeo and various other things. And so they thought that was a great thing to be able to bring their animals out and actually pull fiber in. And in that particular location, we probably pulled about 20 miles of fiber on horseback. So I thought that might be of interest to you guys. So next slide. Talk a little bit about community partnerships. We have 2 cities in our service territory, the city of Montrose and the city of Delta. We also have 6 smaller townships. So there's really 8 towns within our service territory over here on the western slope. And I'm just going to point the Montrose one out, but we did similar things with all of our communities. What you do with your stakeholders is so important in these jobs because, for instance, the city of Montrose wanted to charge us about $3.5 million for permitting fees when we would go in to do this Elevate construction. We went to them and said, we need to partner with you on this because adding $3 million of cost to this project is not a great thing, right? When it's for your constituents also. So in April of 2017, we drafted and signed an MOU with the city of Montrose, laying out certain things we agreed to do and certain things they agreed to do. For instance, in that case, they forewent all $3.5 million of permitting fees if we would agree to serve every single resident and passing in their city. So we could not cherry pick. We had to go build out everything, whether it was going to be like a really dense neighborhood, really sparse neighborhood. We had to go build out everything. But if we would do that, they partnered with us and gave us about $3.5 million in avoided permitting costs. Also, the city of Montrose had a lot of conduit in the ground already from projects they had done. Not wanting to dig more, they gave us access to that conduit space needed or space available through that MOU as well. So we partnered with our towns and our cities in the area, and it was a huge reason we were able to get the construction done quicker and more economically. So if you go to the next slide, and then the next one, please. So here's who we are today. Somehow we got a wrong slide deck here. Can you go one more past that? You know what? We've got a slide deck issue. So let me just speak to what I was going to speak to on my notes that I'm looking at here, because these are some of the things you're going to be more interested in figuring out. We've received about $60 million in grant funds today for our build out. That was very significant for us because we've had a fairly significant cost overrun on our network based on our original business cases. And the grant funding has been able to offset that in spades. So we've been pleased to get 60 million in grant funding. Part of that has come through the federal government. Part of that has come through the state of Colorado. So it's a combination of those 2 grant funds. So we constructed about 314 miles of fiber in 2025. That brought us to about 2,500 miles of distribution fiber total that we have built. In 2025, we lit 10 new zones for our membership. Our construction will be complete by the end of 2027. At that point, we will have installed about 3,000 miles of fiber, which includes the middle mile and distribution fiber. and over 4,000 miles if you take our service drops into account. We have about 37,000 meters, so we're not quite as large as some of the co-ops, but we're not small by any stretch of the imagination. Today, we have 34,000 of those members that have access to Elevate, so about 91% of them to date have access to Elevate if they choose to take it. And currently, our take rate hovers right around 50%, sometimes as high as 52, sometimes as low as 48 or 49, but literally we hover right at about a 50% take rate. We have about 18,600 internet customers. We have about 3,500 telephone customers, and we have about 825 TV customers as well. We do offer the triple play. And we have a net promoter score of 72. I don't know how many of you know net promoter, but typically if you look at comm companies, they'll have especially your big nationwide ones, they may have net promoter scores in the single digits or some of them even in the negative digits. And we have a net promoter score of 72, which is pretty awesome. So, and 4 years in a row now, we've been voted the best internet in both Montrose and Delta counties. So if you'll just kind of go a couple slides further. Yeah, let's talk about the future. Yeah. So
Mark,
one thing that happened to us.
Sorry, Mark. Give us just 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll have to wrap up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We had a small rural telco in our area for many years that was purchased by TDS out of Wisconsin years ago and still operated as Delta County Telecom. Just a year ago in June, we acquired that company. So we are going to take the customers they had and turn them essentially into Elevate customers up in that area. The primary reason we did this is those customers were going to be kind of islanded and still have kind of an old-fashioned copper network. And so we acquired that company, and we're in the process right now of moving all of those people to a fiber-based network. So that's kind of our future. And I'll cede back to you, Ted, and let you go for questions maybe.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm going to turn it over to my co-director, Allison, for some wrap up.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Ty, Nate, Tim, and Mark for a really thoughtful and practical conversation about the different ways co-ops are navigating the future of connectivity. I think the major takeaway here is that this isn't just a technology issue for rural communities. It's an infrastructure issue, an economic development issue, a member service issue, really a quality of life issue. And I really appreciated Mark's focus on economic development, healthcare, and education, because that's what it hits. That's what we're trying to accomplish for our members. And that's why this is so important. So just thank you for that information. We had a couple questions in the chat, but actually a number of our presenters already answered those. So what I'd actually like to do is encourage you all. We have resources on our co-op compass, which is linked on our website. And we've added some broadband resources that talk more about some of these projects, as well as I saw in Mark's data, he was pulling some data from the Center on Rural Innovation, which compared the business growth rates, the per capita income growth, GDP growth in areas served by broadband that have 80% broadband or more. That study is also in the compass. So if you want to look into this more, if you want to start asking those questions, is this a fit for our co-op? We'd encourage you to go check those resources out and then ask us questions. That's what the Co-op Innovation Network is here for. And we are happy to get you connected with people, with organizations that have done this work before and can help you be successful in your own projects. And you can see on the screen here, encourage you to sign up for our newsletter or check out our website. You can follow us to get more of these great resources. And certainly, if you have additional questions, we'll hang on a few more minutes. You can drop those questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that we put those into a blog or some other space where you can get answers from our presenters. So once again, thank you so much, presenters, for your time, and thank you all of us for joining us today.
Thank you.